this jar is every single book I put in a monthly TBR this year. As you can see, I did not read according to my TBRs. Hello, I'm Beth Joey and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Every month I do have the best of intentions to read a certain amount of books and a certain specific range of books, and then I proceed to forget all about it once the month actually starts and I pick up my first book. So in this video, we're going to talk about all the books on my physical TBR. We're not going to go into Kindle or NetGalley that are in this jar that I did not read this year, in the hopes that I will remind myself what I actually wanted to read and pick up a few of these books. And of course, please do let me know in the comments down below if you recommend any of these books over any others so that I know what to jump straight into at the beginning of the month. And of course, do let me know in the comments down below if there are any books that you specifically recommend that I jump straight into, because I want to know what I should be picking up first. As I said, we're only going through my physical TBR, so let's start with Powerless by Lauren Roberts. Not only was I supposed to read this book in July, but I actually went through and put sticky notes in for every time where I would have to swap to Powerful, the novella, so that I could like tandem read this book. Like I had these cute little panda bear sticky notes. So I fully prepared to read this book and then just never actually push the button, hit go, and actually read it. This book has gone absolutely nuts on BookTok, BookTube, all the places recently, and I've heard that it is kind of like Hunger Games Red Queen inspired, and I loved both of those series, though I haven't finished Red Queen. So I am really keen to read this. It follows Peyton Gray, who is an ordinary in a world where ordinary people are persecuted by the people who have powers. So Peyton, as an ordinary, she poses as a psychic with sort of minimal ability in order to get by and not be, you know, killed by the people in power, until one day she's put into this deadly competition called the Purging Trials, where they showcase the elite's powers. And so she's forced to team up with Kai, the prince that she's fighting feelings for, and also the prince that she has to hide her identity from, in order to just survive in these trials. As I said, this book's gone absolutely mental everywhere, and I do really want to pick it up soon. I just haven't gone around to pulling the trigger yet. Then we've got The Chase by Elle Kennedy, which is the first book in the Briar U series, which is the spin-off to the Off Campus series by this author. It is a series of hockey romances, and it's set at Briar University. This book, I believe, follows the younger sister of one of the main male characters in the first series. Her name is Summer, and she moves in with Colin Fitzgerald and his best friend. The best friend has a crush on her, and Colin Fitzgerald himself is like the complete opposite of her. He's a nerd, he does gaming, he is covered in tattoos. Fitz is also buddy-buddy with her brother, so there's a brother's best friend element in here, but opposites attract and they fall in love, and I cannot wait to see the wild whirlwind that is Summer fall in love with a sort of more shy, quiet, hockey playing, nerd, video gaming kind of guy. I think it's gonna be really fun. I was supposed to read this in February, so it has been on the TBR for a while. Then we've got The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren, which is a spin-off of, I think, The Soulmate Equation by this author, following Felicity Chen, or Fizzy. She was like the best friend that everybody loved in that first book, and I am excited, though I'm a little bit nervous because I do have a sort of track record with Christina Lauren where I love that author duo's like older stuff, but some of their newer stuff I haven't really vibed with as much. But anyway, it follows Fizzy Chen, who has an incredible career as a beloved romance novelist, but she's struggling to find love for herself. Then on the other side, we've got Connor Prince, who is a documentary filmmaker and a single father, and one day his bosses come up to him and force him to sort of get involved in the creation of a reality TV show. Desperate to find a romantic lead for the TV show, he then stumbles across Fizzy Chen, and he thinks, what better opportunity than to create a reality TV show about finding love surrounding a romance novelist. So they team up to create this show and of course fall in love along the way. I remember in the first book, The Soulmate Equation, the child that was involved in that was really like amazing and probably one of the best like kid written into a story books that I've ever read. So I'm really hoping I love that in this book as well. And I'm hoping that the vibes of the first book carry over into this one and just make for an incredibly romantic, feel-good time. I was also supposed to read this in February, so it's definitely high up on the list now. But even earlier than that, in January, I put the Book of Love by Kelly link onto my TBR. This is an ARC copy that I picked up at Yalc in 2023. I had a lot more success at Yalc in 2023 than I did in 2024 in terms of winning like free books and ARCs and that sort of thing. And yeah, this is one of the books that I picked up because I initially thought that the book was going to be about love, but I think it's more about life. So it follows a group of kids who I think are murdered one day, or they go missing. Yeah, they go missing without a trace 1 year before the events of this book, and everybody presumes that they are dead until one day they find themselves sort of appearing in their classroom, and there's this school teacher there who offers them the chance to return to the real world, return to life because they are actually dead, if they are able to find out the mystery behind their death. So I guess it's sort of like a murder mystery following the people who actually died kind of story. I think the thing that I'm hesitating with on this one is the length of it. For me, murder mysteries shouldn't be any more than like 350 pages, if not significantly less, because then you kind of lose the pace of the story. But I guess with this one, you've got that sort of magical realism element in there, and then the mystery and potentially commentary about life. I don't know, but I am intrigued by it. But yeah, the length of it is scaring me a little bit. I was supposed to read this in January though, so maybe I'll read it a year later in January of 2025. Another ARC that I picked up at Yalc 2023 was A Fragile Enchantment by Allison Saft, though I wasn't actually planning to read this until July of that year. This is a fantasy romance, and I think it's YA that everybody loved when it came out in January of 2024. It says Twin Crowns meets Bridgerton in this swoon-worthy YA fantasy, and I think there's so much about that is just perfect for me because I love Twin Crowns and I love Bridgerton, so that just means this is perfect for me. But it follows Neve, who is a renowned dressmaker who is able to stitch her emotions and her feelings into the seams of the dresses that she creates. She does this by using the magic that sits in her blood, but unfortunately that magic is eventually doomed to kill her. Then one day she is commissioned to create outfits for an upcoming royal wedding. So she travels to the royal castle, and there she meets Kit. He is a prince with a cold and prickly demeanor, but they find themselves drawn to each other to the point that one day a gossip columnist writes about a potentially scandalizing chemistry forming between them. So Neve has to decide whether her magical curse will allow her to experience love and whether she is willing to risk her reputation in order to find love. That is probably a horrible description of this book, but it's what I know of it and I am intrigued. Like I said, I was meant to read this in July, which most of these books is that's when I was meant to read them, and I am still keen for it, but it's YA fantasy romance and I personally tend to prefer adult fantasy romance, so this may not be as up my alley as I originally thought, but it's still intriguing because I love Twin Crowns and that is also YA fantasy romance, so hopefully this brings some of those vibes into it and I love it just as much. Next up, we've got Snow Like Ashes by Sara Raasch. I got this book as part of a book swap that I did on like Vinted or Depop or something like that. It was one of those ones where I didn't really want anything that the other seller was putting up on their store, but I really wanted to get rid of the books that I had, so I was like, fuck it, I'll just choose that one, and I ended up getting like the full trilogy, I think. But this follows Mira, who is an orphan following the defeat of her kingdom called Winter. The kingdom was conquered 16 years ago, its citizens were enslaved, and it left them without a magic system or a monarch. But the citizens that remained, the 8 survivors, are desperate to reclaim that magic and rebuild their kingdom. So that's when we meet Mira, who hears of a locket, I believe, that is able to restore their magic. So she ventures out to try and find it, presumably with the help of her best friend and future king, Mather, who she is desperately in love with. This is another book that I was supposed to be reading in July. Next up, we have Pride and Premeditation by Tirzah. I love the cover of this purely because of like the feel of it. It's like got this almost clothy kind of material to it, and it's amazing, but then also the cover is quite pretty. This book is essentially a Pride and Prejudice retelling, but make it murder mystery. So we follow a 17-year-old aspiring law student, Lizzie Bennet, so Elizabeth Bennet, and a young fledgling lawyer, Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy, so Mr. Darcy, and they go head to head in a murder case that has shocked London society. But as the case and her feelings for Darcy become more and more complicated, Lizzie begins to realize that her dream career could make her happy, but it could also get her killed. This was in my January TBR, but it's also a massive priority read for me because I've got the second book in this series, In Want of a Suspect, and I think that comes out in December of 2024, and I really want to read this one before I pick that up, so I need to pick this up really soon. Then we've got The Lighthouse Witches by C.J. Cooke. This one terrifies me. It genuinely terrifies me because it doesn't have a romantic element in it, and everything I read now has romance in it. Otherwise, I don't really want to read it because I love romance that much. I don't know, I figured out that I'm a romance reader and that's my happy place, that's where I want to be. So books without it tend to scare me a little bit. This book is supposed to be a gothic masterpiece set on this strange and mysterious abandoned Scottish island with this mysterious lighthouse on it where people that go there tend to disappear, never heard from again, and it all started with a witch hunt that happened way back in the history. But Livesday and her children don't believe in curses, so they go and live on this island, but over a series of years, soon enough, only one child is left alive, and that is Luna. But then 20 years later, Luna's missing sister reappears, unchanged by time. So it opens up this whole mystery of where these disappearing people go, how this sister came back, and why she hasn't aged a day. I definitely can see the gothic vibe that is trying to be sort of portrayed in that blurb. I am intrigued by the mystery and I love a little bit of witchiness in my reads, but again, this is quite intimidating. I was supposed to read this as part of a book club that I was in October, but then I didn't end up reading it, so I didn't participate in the book club, and now I'm regretting it because I hear it was a lot of fun, but I still want to read the book. Then for another book club I was in October, I was supposed to be reading A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I have actually already read this book, but it is part of a really big reread project I'm doing at the moment where I reread everything Sarah J. Maas has written in the sort of ACTA, Crescent City, Throne of Glass world in publication order. So that means swapping between series for the romantic in me that wants to experience this world in the way that the readers who read along in publication order experienced it. If you don't know what this book is about, then you're probably living under a rock, but it essentially follows Feyre, who one day in the pursuit to help her family survive, goes out hunting in the forest and kills a wolf. Then later that night, I think, a man shows up at her door, storms in and says, "You killed my friend, lol jokes, that wolf was actually my friend. So now as penance for killing my friend, you have to come and live with me in the spring court for the rest of time, and I will look after your family in the human realm if you do so." So Feyre, seeing no other option, crosses over the wall separating the human lands from the Fey lands, and she moves in with Tamlin, the High Lord of the Spring Court, only to realize there is a whole war going on over the other side of the wall that she never knew existed. There is Fey and mystery and betrayal and romance that you'd never expect towards the end of this book and going into the rest of the series. But this first book is very much a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It is absolutely viral just about everywhere. I think this is the book series that kind of made Sarah J. Maas mainstream. Throne of Glass came first, but this one made her way more popular because it is that sort of fantasy romance leaning. I could be wrong, I wasn't reading her books at the time when these were first coming out, but that's what I'm thinking. So yeah, I am keen to get into this element of my reread project, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. Next up is a book I was supposed to read in February, and that is Hopeless by Elsie Silver. This is the final book in the Chestnut Springs world, which is a series of standalone small town sort of cowboy romances following the Eaton brothers and the sort of people that they adopt into their family, as well as the women that they fall in love with. So this brother is Beau Eaton. He is the brother that we've all been waiting for because his story has been hinted at in the previous books, and there is definitely going to be an emotional element to his story that I have been eagerly anticipating because he was in the military and he went missing in previous books, and that sort of created one of the plots of one of the earlier books, and now we get to see his experience with that, and I am really excited to see how this story handles like PTSD and the trauma that he experienced. But anyway, as for the romance, it follows Beau Eaton, whose family just won't leave him alone because they want him to be happy. And then he stumbles across an outcast bartender who is thoroughly of the belief that no one in town respects her or takes her seriously because of the family that she associates with. So Beau and our bartender make a bet. Beau believes that no one in town holds her last name against her, so he decides that he's going to change her last name and they become fake fiancés. He gets a break from his concerned family's ever-present prying, and she gets a chance to shed her family's reputation. But of course, as they sort of fake fiancé it up, they begin to fall in love with each other, and we get this beautiful, like, fake dating kind of romance between two opposites who are blurring the lines and struggling to keep their hands off of each other. This is a romance that I have been so eagerly anticipating, and as a result, I haven't wanted to read it because I have this thing where if it's the end of a world that I love so much, I don't want it to be over, so I don't want to read the last thing in that world. I mean, this was in my February TBR, and I am really excited for it, so I need to read it soon. Next up, we have Love Unwritten by Lauren Asher, which is the second book in the Lakefront Billionaires series, which is the latest series from this author. It is a series of billionaire romances, and this one is a single dad billionaire romance following Raasch and Elle. So Raasch is the single dad. He's a struggling workaholic, and on paper he has nothing in common with Elle because she is a hopeless romantic singer-songwriter, except for his son. For 8 months he has avoided her until the summer trip comes along and he hires her as the nanny for his son, and they spend 2 weeks together on this summer trip. But after Raasch's divorce, he swore to protect his heart at all costs, and that includes not letting Elle into it, despite how much he has growing feelings for her. I am excited for this one. This book is in a more recent TBR in November. No, sorry, that's wrong. It was in October's TBR, but I think I am intimidated by the length of it and by the fact that I enjoyed Love Redesigned, the first book in this series, but it wasn't 5 stars for me. We're on to the last 3 books, which are my hardbacks. The first one is Lightlark by Aster. This one has blown up, I think, a year or so ago, and I haven't heard much about it since, but I am still excited to read it because it does have sequels, I think, coming out. I think the second one is already out, but maybe there's a third one coming. Essentially, this follows a world where every 100 years, the gods hold a competition called the Centennial. It's a deadly game where the rulers of 6 kingdoms fight to break their curses and win unparalleled power. And in this story, we're following one particular ruler, Elle, who I believe is like a siren whose curse is that she can't fall in love without killing the person that she's in love with. So her and her people are desperate to break this curse, and in order to do so, she must lie, cheat, and betray, even as love complicates everything. I am excited for this one, but yeah, again, another sort of YA fantasy romance, which makes me nervous because I much prefer adult fantasy romances. I am excited for this. As for the TBR it was July, as are most of these books, when I was supposed to be reading a lot of fantasy, so I should have read this a long time ago. Another July TBR reject is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, and part of the reason why I didn't read it in July is because I read A River Enchanted by this author and really did not mesh with the writing style, the plot, or anything. So I have been nervous about picking up more from this author, but I've heard so much hype around this book and the second book in particular, so I do want to read it to give it a chance. But essentially, this is set in sort of wartime in the midst of a god war, and it follows 2 journalists that are rivals. They very much hate each other, and one of those journalists, Iris, has a brother that is fighting in the war, and she has been writing what she believes to be are letters to him. But actually, when she puts these letters into this little secret wardrobe thing that magics the letters away, they're actually being received by our main male character, Roman, and they form this mysterious connection as Iris believes that she's writing to her brother, whereas Roman very much knows that he's receiving the letters and he's writing back to her. It's an enemies to lovers fantasy romance, and I am excited for it, but once again, it's YA, and 2, I don't have a great track record with this author. And I hear that the first book is very romance focused, so I am excited for that. And lastly, in my November TBR, I had Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. So this one I have to read after A Court of Thorns and Roses because it came out after that one, but it is the 3rd or 4th book, I want to say, in the Throne of Glass series. If you don't know what that series is about, again, you've probably been living under a rock, but it follows Selena Sardothian, who is an assassin in the land of Aurelia. And the book starts with her being in this salt mine called Endovia, and she is offered the opportunity by the prince and the captain of the guards to escape from this salt mine and participate in a competition, a deadly competition, to become the king's champion, and after 7 years of service, she will win her freedom. She cannot pass up this opportunity, so she travels to the glass castle to take part in the competition with a number of other sort of thieves and thugs and murderers, hiding her identity so no one truly knows who she is, only to be embroiled in scandal and betrayal and intrigue and this murder mystery that I never really expected from the fantasy series, but very much loved. Obviously, the whole series expands significantly from there, and in this book, the book before this one, we learned so much about her and the world that she's in. Some of my favorite characters really come into play in this book, and I am excited to dive back into that world. So those are all of my TBR rejects for this year. I haven't included anything from December because I still have hope to read some of those books, but do let me know in the comments down below if there are any books that you think I need to prioritize first, or just let me know what you're reading at the moment, loving it, hating it, all that kind of thing. I love talking to you guys, so please do come and chat to me. If you enjoyed this video, please do like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can be notified whenever I release new content. I'm really looking forward to hopefully building things up a little bit more in this channel. And also do check out my TikTok where I post more sort of short form, immediate reaction content to the books that I am reading. It's a fun, good time over there. But that is it for me today, so I will see you very soon in my next video. I hope you have an incredible day, and yeah, I'll see you soon. Bye.